Hi there. This is Hi-Fi X, also known as Orin, also known as Rensock. Welcome welcome to my Let's Play of Mahōtsukai no Yoru, also known as Witch on the Holy Night. This is going to be a blind visual novel reading, so, well, enjoy. It was said, there was a mansion that rested on top of a hill, and within it there lived two witches. Outdoors, everything was toned with the lazy rays of afternoon. Inside the mansion, there was little difference. The lack of electric lighting in the entrance hall might have been some personal touch of the architects. Yet the ceiling, which reached high up to the second floor, had a magnificent sunroof built into it, looking over the whole room. The only illumination you could find was sunlight at day, and moonlight by night. In rainy days, the hall is often bathed in pre-dawn gloom, and moonless nights mean a cold, black-starred darkness where everything seems to have stopped. Ayoko was sorely tempted to just plop down and forget everything in the drawing room on the east wing, but she decided she needed to change her clothes and calm herself down a bit, so she made her way to the staircase. The staircase hugged the wall, ending at the second floor. The third floor was the attic, and to reach it, you would have had to make your way to a separate room behind the entrance hall, where a different staircase awaited. Ayoko, however, had not laid a foot in that attic for nigh on 2 years now. The Kuonji estate is separated into an east and a west wing. The two rooms that have been parceled out for Ayoko's use are in the east wing. The door to the room itself looks like the kind of the thing you'd find interesting in old picture books. And once you open it, you find a sort of storage room, which it had been for 5 years. Probably the reason why the attic sat unused for so long. Ayoko's room sat alongside the east wing's main upper corridor. When she first lodged here and had her pick of rooms, she ended up choosing a room that was no larger than average. She picked it not out of some sense of reservation, but simply due to the fact that a smaller room would be easier to clean. In the room was the largest bed, Ayoko's beloved mahogany desk, a wardrobe for coats and clothing, and 2 9-row bookcases. Those were what she brought with her from her parents' place. And if you had to abbreviate Ayoko Ayazaki's 16 years of life, it's likely you would start with those things. This room and the other room right next to this one completed the picture. Oh, right. I have to check if Alice's watchtower isn't broken yet. And so she made her way to the other room to make sure the work that she had stayed up all night for bore some fruit. Though separated from her room by only one wall, the study was nevertheless a completely different affair. Here was her different life, one she had sustained for a little less than a year now. This room was not for the girl that she had been, but the one she was destined to become. It was her sanctum, a world all her own. But for now, forget about destroyed. It's just gone without a trace. Guess it really is too early for me to be going off with my own style. Laugh now if you want to, Sir Robin. She addressed this to her small and quite unconcerned companion beside her, which promptly replies by taking flight around the room. Ayoko didn't mind though. She was something of a wild spirit. Though her talent was never so great, she poured every effort into anything she did, and she never looked on failure as something to be feared, but an opportunity to face her next attempt hoping for the best. After changing out of her school uniform into something she felt more at home with, she returned to first sword. After descending the stairs, she made her way to the east wing, opening the door that led to the main lower corridor. Before her stood a long hallway, dark as any underground chamber. Unlike the entrance hall, this place didn't have the benefit of natural lighting, so lights were placed in space throughout the length of the corridor. With a flick of a switch, the corridor was flooded with light. Satisfied, Ayoko proceeded through the door nearest her. I don't even want to imagine a life without electricity. The drawing room was furnished like a room in some old chateau. The impressively yet subtly patterned wall, the grand leather couches, the high-class Persian carpets, and yet, as if totally oblivious to the atmosphere of the entire thing, enshrined as the center of attention was a 30-inch television. Slowly, Ayoko's more modern ideas of home improvement were starting to take root. The television sat like a naked king in all his glory, attended to dutifully by its servants, the two couches at its flanks. When Ayoko first moved in, she had insisted on the absolute necessity of the device. The mistress of the house, with whom Ayoko had had more than a few initial arguments, had shown an obvious dislike of the television at first, but now they shared some mutual understanding. Well, it's not like my family was the pinnacle of modern thinking either, Ayoko mutters to herself. Just being home has made Ayoko's mood take a turn for the better. So she makes her way over to the kitchen to make herself some tea. Adjacent to the drawing room, the kitchen is kitted out with all the accessories. Ayoko gets some water boiling and readies a teapot and cup, and before long has made a perfectly good brew of black tea. Ayoko exhaled, satisfied to sink into the couch. She took the teacup to her lip, sipping once, then twice. She listened closely to the rhythmic ticking of the clock, considering what she could do in the remaining hours of the afternoon. A third sip, The couch was so treacherously soft, enough to feel that you would want to drown your entirety in it. Ayoko's eyes flickered and blinked, but she quickly raised herself from the cushions. Surely this was no dream. But without her noticing, a girl sat on the couch before her. Unfazed, Ayoko put a finger around her teacup handle. Strangely enough, the warmth of the tea she had just been sipping from was now nowhere to be found. I fell asleep, didn't I? Asked Ayoko to the girl across the coffee table from her. I'm afraid so, replied the girl without looking at her. Her voice seemingly unconcerned. Had the girl not spoken, she could have been mistaken for a beautiful, well-crafted doll. She sits on a couch, almost unmoving, reading an old book. The skin on the hands that hold the book seemed to never have tasted the sun, pure and white as snow. Everything about her seemed used to gloom, almost a muted aura that was barely perceptible. Her hair is black, deeper than Ayoko's, and her cold, colored eyes, drifting gently from left to right, scan the pages of the book. Her dress, similar in appearance to a rose black habit, is the uniform of the exclusive ladies' school she goes to. The color suits her well, too well to be any good for her, if you'd ask Ayoko. She exuded an illustrative grace, almost as if she'd been born with her sense of unreality. She kept her gaze downwards, and the pale, exposed neck looked enchanting, even to a girl like Ayoko. She is Alice Kuwanji, a girl of an age with Ayoko and her fellow occupier of the house, of which they are the only two. How long was I out? An hour, more or less. I do hope you know that you'll catch cold sleeping here. Her voice made her sound disinterested, but this was old hat to Ayoko, who paid it no mind. After taking the wall clock at once, Ayoko found the hour hand hovering just above 7 p.m., which meant that she had been asleep almost 2 hours. It didn't surprise her, though. Today had been one of those days. An all-nighter effort followed up by a difficult day, so liable to make anyone tired enough to collapse on a couch. You know, you could have at least tried waking me up. I finally got a cup of tea, and now it's all gone cold. It was already cold when I came in here. Well, I knew that. I just thought you could have said something while I was asleep. With nothing to be done about it, Ayoko downs the cold tea in a single swig. The limited heating of the Kuwanji estate, even the rather plain temperature of the tea, was enough to wake Ayoko to her senses. Not worthy of all the Fortnum and Mason stuff in here, but oh well. It's a bit late, but welcome back, Alice. Seems without you around, I can't even get a few hours of peace and quiet. Someone up there really has it in for me. Might not be too early to think about praying to a shrine, now that I think about it. Ayoko sighed, already feeling that while she was in for a penny of defeat, she might as well go for a pound. Alright, what went this time. Spending 2 years together under the same roof has a tendency to make you attenuated to other person's traits. This was no different. Ayako had her own hidden implications, while Alice picks up on them in her own way, and then something resembling a cross-examination starts. As if on cue, Ayako began her reply. Wait. First, I've got to apologize. Remember what I was working on all night last night? Well, it's a complete bust now. At first, I noticed that it was seriously heating up and kept getting busted, so I loosened it up some 2 or 3 wires. Ayako recounted the story with an air of humor, almost like it was someone else's accident. Right. So then this morning the school called up and said I needed to be there on the double. Then when I got there, I found out that the job of showing around the new transfer student suddenly became my business. Faster than I could have complained, I've already lost my entire day. And what do you know, when I came back, the entire thing had just up and disappeared on me. You're not mad at me, are you, Alice? Not really, no. If I became angry every single time you caused damage to my property, I'd be a lifetime of arguments, wouldn't it? There will always be replacements, so all you need to do is start over. As a matter of fact, I'm rather expecting you to be angry after your day. Ayako made an annoyed sound. Alice was unusually keen today. She knew that it was these items when Ayako made a show of composure, while hiding resentment inside her. She tried her best to pay the riposte, no mind. Well, I suppose this new transfer student is the strangest guy. Apparently he lived way up in the boonies, and it's already obvious from the way he talks that he's not gonna fit in easily. I mean, really, they say the mountains are entirely other world, but this guy is living, breathing proof, Alice looks up at the sound of her name, but Ayako, not truly expecting any show of sympathetic response from Alice, continues to elaborate. I knew he'd be troubled the moment I laid my eyes on him, but it was when I took him to a classroom that I got the real kicker. I mean, he actually thought that every classroom was supposed to be used for a one-on-one between teacher and student. I guess that could happen, but it's not like it's a regular thing. But we aren't done. So then, I explained to him, in as much patience and brevity as I could pull, what classrooms actually are. I imagine what he said after that. So, Eizaki, what are the other classrooms for? That's what he said. I mean, what other kinds of classrooms are there? So here we have this guy who probably couldn't figure out which end to use a knife with if you didn't tell him. I don't know if he's just not used to asking questions, or he has some deficiency in his imagination. Well, I guess you did get what I was trying to explain the first time around, so you can't be that dumb. While this is amusing, it is fairly rare that you'd be so enraptured in criticizing someone. It's no wonder you pay him a great amount of attention if he's as hopeless as you say he is. Oh, there's not a fiber in my body that cares about him. Don't get me wrong. I'm just worried that he might get into some serious misunderstandings tomorrow. She let it be left unsaid that her worry mostly stemmed from the very real chance that whatever mess the guy stirred up, she would be the likely candidate to clean it up. At least, that's what she thought. Otherwise, apart from his ruining of Ayoko's day, there would be nothing truly about him to worry for. Anyway, his weirdness is none of my business. Actually, he might be more suited to you, Alice. The mountains are a rather scenic otherworld, aren't they? The no words passed between them. It was clear that what both of them were saying. But he would have to get a look at me before we could ever think of talking, said Alice's eyes. There's a rub, isn't it? Ayoko's glance responded in kind. So, Alice, mind telling me what it is you've been reading for a while now? A book on the evolution of spirits. However, this one is a very clear fakery of the spiritual diary. What? Swedenborg now? Why do you even need to read that then? The original is an exercise in tedium, but reading it this way almost highlights the flaws and merits of the man in ways the original could never have done. It's almost like a well-written adventure novel. However, the handwriting seems to be your grandfather's. This one is his too, huh? Always seemed to have a hand in every sort of book. I'll miss him. Ayoko's voice became just that little bit smaller than the mention of her grandfather. I could have sworn he sent you correspondence this summer. Can it? He's dead, alright? At that, both grew silent. Ayoko leaned her back into the couch without another thought, sighing as she did so. The soft cushion molded itself to her back, and soon enough she was completely lying down on the thing. I'd wanted to talk to you about... Alice trailed off, though her eyes remained on Ayoko, sprawled sideways all over the black couch, still as a dead body. As for Ayoko, talking and thinking were about the last thing she wanted to do. But she could practically feel Alice's eyes judging her. And the more she thinks about it, the more she tries to will the events of the day to just go away and lose themselves in her mind. Ayoko knew that if she just ignored Alice's silent stare, their conversation could have ended here. They would have stood up, tried their best to ignore what happened today, and just wait for tomorrow. But Ayoko Aozaki was never one to ignore the problem. Alright, what's wrong? Ayoko asked, not bothering to get up. It must sting a little that you failed today. Which is why I'll just go back to square one. I told you, I'm going to study harder when I get older, okay? Alright, let's leave it at that. Alice's cold-voiced reply tempts Ayoko to grind her teeth. Ayoko knew what she wanted to say. They'd been over this a dozen times before. It was about the double life they led. They were simple high school students in the public eye, but here in this house, they were different. Ayoko said that the modern world made plenty of good ways for them to hide in plain sight, but Alice had told her more than once that this was a half-hearted way of going about it. Her silence said it all. You want me to decide once and for all, and soon, don't you? Alice had often asked Ayoko to weigh her life here and her life as a student, and judge what mattered more to her. Ayoko often found the scales tip to the latter. But Ayoko knew that today's failure in her task, a small misstep in the scheme of things, nevertheless served as a symbol to Alice of her friend's lack of conviction. I don't think I have to remind you that it's my decision to make. Mine. You don't have any say in it. When she had reached a certain age, it was revealed to Ayako that there would be a time when she would have to make a decision. That was more than a year and a half ago. And since then, her morals and her conscience had been consciously challenged, and her patience had just about run its course. Ayako stood up, suddenly and vigorously, and in front of her was Alice, wordlessly observing her, though her face told her all she needed to know. Fine, Alice. Sometime next week, I'll have my decision. Is that fine with you? As long as it's fine with you. Ayako shook her head, feeling like she'd heard some variation on the very same circular logic just a few hours ago. How could that startlingly silly man still haunt Ayako even at home? Then you get everything ready, since I'm still hopelessly at this. Hopeless of this. We're doing in this in the park, as always. The ley lines there are perfect. Oh, but wait. What about the forest? Doesn't that need to be taken care of? There'll be time for that soon enough. I'll inform you immediately if there is any change in the situation in the forest. Sensing an end to the discussion, Alice returned her attention to the book resting on her lap. Their important matters having been concluded, they returned now to being two individuals who seemed, for all purposes, to get on with each other. Business as usual. Ayako reached for the remote control of the television and turned it on. Alice continued to read, but found her eyes wandering toward the dull variety show on the television. Oh. Came from the sound from Alice's mouth, suddenly cut off. She had her hand on her chin, a thoughtful, impulsive expression of someone who had something to say, and almost immediately realized how stupid it would be to say it, and thus elected instead to keep her mouth shut. Ayako knew that there were these rare times when she did this, when Alice's own restraint was just a hair too late to prevent anyone from noticing that she was about to think something out loud. As a matter of fact, she knew Alice used to say before. It seemed "oh" was her new noise. Ayako looked over at her poor friend. What's up? Ayako asked as she lowered the volume of the television. Her vibrant cat-like eyes scanned Alice, and it almost made her look like she was about to pull a prank. It's of no importance, really, but... Ayako was starting to get nervous. Alice saw it fit to hide her embarrassment by suddenly taking an intense interest in the floor, but it was clear well before that point that she was at a loss on what to say. These moments of irritation that sometimes plagued Alice were the only times that she showed any warmth or consideration. If her father had been able to see her this way, he would have probably nodded in approval, thinking that the name she gave her daughter had come to fit her well. I came home today and saw something strange. I had hoped to talk to someone about it, but... Ayako nodded, pressing for her to continue. It is quite a trifle. Almost meaningless, really. Yet the more I think about it, the less motive I can think for someone to perform such a thing. Ayako, would you know the reason for a cat the size of a man to go about delivering meals? Within a an instant upon hearing her question, Ryoko thought that this was another one of Alice's poor attempts at humor. Ryoko had always been very weak at recognizing if Alice was trying to tell a joke or being dead serious. It seemed to be the latter. Could she possibly be creatively exaggerating? No. It seemed she was really talking about something she actually saw. Wait a second. There's about 2 completely undigestible lines in that last sentence of hers. Let's try to tackle this one systematically, okay? That would be best. I had thought at first that it must be some sort of queer device, but I could not think of a reason for why it looked that way it did. My next thought was that it was a finely crafted costume of a cat, out here to advertise the latest takeout menus, or something similar. But could it really be that simple? I'd think really hard if there's any sane person who actually do that before I start to think about the simplicity of the entire thing. But that's just me. In response to this, Alice smiled slightly. Still, if the world has room for things as strange as us two, or even recently surrendering war veterans who live in the mountains, then I'm sure it has room for weirdos of every stripe. If it was me that saw that thing though, I'd probably try to ask it what it was doing. At this, Alice averted her eyes a bit. Take-out cats wandering in the darkening streets of the Misaki Hills residential quarters. Get a background of a sunset here, and it starts to sound like urban fantasy, doesn't it? Anyway, how are we handling dinner? Since we've already on the subject, why don't we go for takeout? Ryoko had made no secret of her love of takeout, and her delight of it corresponded with every expected word of that last sentence. In this mansion, there are no arranged turns to cook dinner, no weekly duties. It depends solely on either occupant's inclination to cook, at which point the individual so inclined will, with a certainty, cook enough for 2. They have been doing this for so long that it has become a system. An unreliable system that has led, on one occasion, to the lack of dinner for a straight week, but a system that both have nevertheless found to be the most convenient. Whether it stems from the time it takes to cook, or a true liking of takeout food, neither can truly say. A situation like tonight's, where ordering out becomes the only solution, isn't rare at all for them. And because of this, the restaurants and food joints of downtown Misaki have this estate's address on a special service list. Often the pair decide to order in the hours, like get past 8 in the evening, where it's delivered, and then has to train all the way to the top of the hill. Obviously, this causes the restaurants no short amount of misery. Now here before 8, so I think we can still make it. Do you think Kongetsu is fine? I haven't revisited the udon with eggs for a while now, after all, said Ryoko as she pulled out all manner of fast food tablets, laying them down on the coffee table like she was playing poker with them. Her eyes darted over pictures of food and their prices, scanning them studiously as she would read documents and her position as City Council President, except that she looked immensely more pleased with herself. Alice couldn't bear to look at Ayoko's smile growing larger every other second, yet with little disinclination, she said something without eyeing her friend straight. I'm so sorry, Ayoko, but I've already eaten dinner. At those words, Ayoko froze. There was at least a 2-meal minimum for delivery in any given restaurant, which meant that if Alice wasn't going to get any food, then she wasn't getting any either. Ayoko wanted to call anyway, to try her luck, but knew it wasn't going to work. and for those brief seconds of realization, she couldn't think of more chilling a thought. As an aside, the food joints have recently begun to implement a simple countermeasure against their notorious pair of customers on the hill. That is, to make a minimum order delivery amount to 3 meals. The tactic is being adopted in many stores now, though Aoka and Alice are as yet ignorant of this evil conspirational plot. You traitor! So that's why you were late coming home. So that's why you were so late coming home. You don't have any after-school clubs, and even if I factor in the walk and the bus you take for school, it only takes you 20 minutes to go from there to here. Why didn't I notice it before? And I swear, Ayoko has likely forgotten that she had even failed to notice that she had fallen asleep earlier, which puts her in a very bad position to even begin to think about her friend's preemptive dinner plans. I won't forget this, Alice. We had an agreement that if one of us ate out alone, we'd bring home a share for the other. You knew that. I mean, come on. The last time I ate out, I brought you home some, didn't I? It's difficult to tell how much truth there is in Aoka's outrage, but she does have every reason to be so indignant. Having been woken up this morning by a phone call from school, calling her to service, she somehow hadn't found the time to eat or drink the entire day, save for that cup of tea. It's positively a miracle that her stomach hasn't complained yet, though it really was entirely her fault for failing to eat something. Still, this was all out of her head. The only thing she was thinking was Alice's dinner countermeasure and how best she could chew her out for it, but why, last time, I am assuming that you referred to the time when you came down from downtown, ate sushi, and yet cheated and only brought me home some pedestrian convenience store food, correct? That's true, but it's better than bringing home nothing, right? I'm sorry. I suppose the truth must at times remain unsaid. The weight of Alice's eyes sent a chill down Aoka's spine. Though Ayoko hadn't intentionally sideswiped Alice with a lesser convenience store meal, it is true that Ayoko, who historically found it hard to resist anything new, especially a new conveyor belt sushi store, which had only opened quite recently. In an elaborate investigation of such a rare event, Ayoko fell to temptation. The truth could be the roots of such great sin. Alright, fine. We got each other. If selling the store was what you wanted, then you got it. Alice replied, only with a slight switch of the arm, betraying no denial of Aoka's statement. That it betrayed no agreement as well only makes her all the more frightened. I knew this wasn't my day. Oh well, guess I'll just have to go to the kitchen and brush up my cooking, said Ayoko to no one in particular. Oh, I forgot to ask you, Alice. Where did you grab dinner anyway? Alice's hand, which had been in the process of filling a page in her book, stopped abruptly. Up to this point, Alice had been talking to Ayoko while trying to read her book. But, as if sensing that enough had been read, she set her book shut and held it in her hand, as she wordlessly stood up and made her way across the drawing room to the door. She looked back over her shoulder, just as she reached the door to open it. Do you really want to know? Well, I do now that you've built it up. Somehow, the brevity of Alice's question left Yoko A walking cat gave it to me. And with that vague answer, she made good her exit from the room. And I think that's the end of this video. Alright, see you in the next one.